What lengths would you go to secure your legacy? For some, the desire to leave behind a part of themselves, a continuation of their name, can become an all-consuming obsession. This is a true story from the case files, a chilling tale of a man driven by this very need, a need that ultimately paved the way for betrayal, deceit, and a tragedy that shattered a family forever. Welcome to the case of the childless man. Our story unfolds in a bustling city, not unlike many you might know. At its heart was Richard, a respected businessman in his late 40s. He had built a successful textile company through years of hard work and dedication. His life was comfortable, his reputation solid, and by his side was his wife, Eleanor, a woman admired for her quiet strength and gentle nature. Theirs was a marriage built on genuine affection and mutual respect, a partnership that had weathered the storms of life with grace. But beneath the veneer of contentment lay a deep, unspoken sorrow. After years of trying, Richard and Eleanor had come to terms with the painful reality that they would likely never have children. Eleanor, with her serene disposition, had found peace in their life together. Richard, however, carried a heavier burden. The societal expectations, the subtle pity in the eyes of his relatives, the constant awareness of his family name potentially ending with him, it all gnawed at his sense of fulfillment. As time marched on, the pressure from Richard's extended family intensified. Gentle suggestions morphed into insistent demands. He was reminded of his duty, his obligation to continue the family line. The whispers grew louder, the glances more pointed. Finally, a decisive meeting was called. Richard was presented with a stark choice: take a second wife who could bear him children, or face the disappointment and potential alienation of his family. Torn between his love for Eleanor and the immense pressure, Richard was trapped. With a heart weighed down by sorrow and Eleanor's tearful, albeit resigned, acceptance, he made the fateful decision. He married Isabel, a young, vibrant woman in her early 20s, full of life and a palpable ambition. Richard provided generously for Isabel, setting her up in a separate, well-appointed apartment within the same large property, a short walk across a shared courtyard from the quiet home he shared with Eleanor. He hoped this physical separation would minimize conflict, but he underestimated the complex web of human emotions he had set in motion. The residence, once a haven of tranquility, became a battleground of unspoken tensions. Eleanor retreated further into her quiet dignity, a silent observer in her own home as Isabel's youthful energy and rising status became increasingly apparent. Isabel, for her part, was not content with her position as the second wife. She craved the full status, the undivided attention, and the social standing that came with being the sole mistress of Richard's household. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken resentment and burgeoning animosity. Then, one ordinary morning, the fragile peace shattered irrevocably. The piercing scream ripped through the stillness of the morning. Servants rushed towards the sound, their footsteps echoing in the sudden panic. They found Eleanor collapsed on the floor of her bedroom, her body unnaturally still, her skin cold to the touch. A spilled teacup lay beside her, shards of delicate porcelain scattered across the floor. Eleanor was dead. She had been poisoned. The news sent shockwaves through the household and the wider community. Richard was devastated, consumed by a grief so profound it left him almost catatonic. He couldn't comprehend the sudden and tragic loss of his beloved Eleanor. The authorities were called in immediately. The initial assessment, fueled by the family's quiet pronouncements, leaned towards suicide. Eleanor, The first wife, seemingly overshadowed and heartbroken, appeared to be the most likely candidate for an act of despair. However, the lead investigator, a meticulous Detective Inspector Davies, a man with years of experience reading between the lines of human tragedy, wasn't convinced. The poison that had ended Eleanor's life was unusual, a potent, fast-acting toxin not readily available. It was clear to Davies that Eleanor had not willingly consumed it. This was not a suicide. This was murder, cold and calculated. The most obvious motive pointed directly at Isabel. The second wife stood to gain everything from Eleanor's death, but a thorough search of Isabel's apartment yielded nothing. No trace of the poison could be found. Isabel herself presented a facade of shock and grief, though Davies noted a certain theatricality in her sorrow. She claimed to have been in her own quarters at the time of Eleanor's death and had been alerted by the screams of the house staff. Her alibi seemed solid, and the servants corroborated her account. Days turned into weeks, and the investigation stalled. The family, eager to avoid a public scandal that could tarnish Richard's reputation and the family name, subtly pushed for the suicide narrative to be accepted. But Detective Inspector Davies, driven by a sense of justice and the nagging inconsistencies in the case, refused to close the file. Davies widened his net, meticulously interviewing every member of the household staff, neighbors, and even revisiting Richard himself, probing for any detail, any flicker of information that might have been overlooked. He learned about the strained dynamics within the house, the subtle power plays, and the simmering resentment. It was during a routine follow-up with the family physician, a discreet and elderly man, that Davies caught a crucial break. The doctor mentioned in passing that Isabel had recently made inquiries about a specific type of fast-acting poison, claiming it was for pest control. The detail had seemed innocuous at the time, but in light of Eleanor's death, it painted a sinister picture. Davies' suspicion towards Isabel reignited with renewed intensity. He delved deeper into her background, uncovering secrets she had carefully concealed. He discovered that Isabel had a clandestine relationship with a local pharmacist, Dr. Alistair Reed, a man known for his knowledge of obscure substances. Davies learned that Isabel had been frequenting the pharmacy under various pretexts. A discreet surveillance operation was launched on Dr. Reed. It wasn't long before Davies' team observed a clandestine meeting between Isabel and the pharmacist in a secluded part of the city. A subtle exchange took place. When Dr. Reed was apprehended shortly after, a small vial containing traces of the same poison that had killed Eleanor was found in his possession. Under intense questioning, Dr. Reed eventually confessed. He admitted to supplying Isabel with the poison, driven by a passionate obsession with her. Isabel, confronted with this irrefutable evidence, finally broke down and confessed to the murder. Her motive was clear. With Eleanor out of the picture, she would become Richard's sole wife, inheriting his wealth and securing her social standing. Her ambition had driven her to commit the ultimate act of betrayal. But the investigation unearthed one final, shocking layer of deceit. Further investigation into Isabel's communication records revealed a disturbing truth. Her relationship with Dr. Reed had begun long before her marriage to Richard. They were lovers who had meticulously plotted their scheme from the very beginning. Isabel's marriage to Richard was nothing more than a calculated move to gain access to his wealth, with the plan to eliminate Eleanor as soon as an opportunity arose. Isabel had been living a double life, deceiving both her husbands with chilling efficiency. Richard was devastated by the revelations. Not only had he lost his beloved Eleanor, but he had been thoroughly manipulated and deceived by Isabel. His desperate desire for an heir had blinded him to the dark currents swirling beneath the surface of his own home. Isabel and Dr. Reed were brought to justice, their calculated crime exposed to the light. The case of the childless man became a stark reminder of the unforeseen and tragic consequences that can arise from unchecked desires and the devastating power of human deceit. The family name would continue, but it would forever be tainted by the blood spilled in the pursuit of an heir. The tranquility of Richard's life was shattered, replaced by the haunting reality of his choices and the irreversible tragedy that had befallen his home.